Thank you all so much for joining us on Skill Up, Stress Down 2.0. Last year, we had a similar workshop in August of last year. There's so many mental health days in the year, but August is, one of those of the many mental wellness month in the year. And so we have chosen this period to um, create workshops like this to engage with entrepreneurs across Canada, share wellness tips as you're trying to build your business, build generational wealth, build some legacy. We know that burnout sometimes will occur. So, what this workshops is here to do is to give you tips and tools from this amazing experts so that when those times come, when you start to feel, overwhelmed, there are options for you. There are tools in your toolbox for you to use to get out of that, funk, right? Obviously, at some point, you would have to reach out to the professionals, and these are professionals that you might want to reach out to. They have culturally appropriate, culturally relevant services available for especially the Black community. So I will read their bios in a short while. But before we start, I just wanted to feel the pulse a little bit. How are we feeling today? Is everybody good? My question would be, what is your favorite season of the year? So let's drop it in the chat. What is your favorite season of the year? Let's put it in the chat. For me, my favorite season is fall. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, my favorite season is fall and then winter and then spring and then summer. That's my that's my list. So we're going into the best time of the year now, and I'm very happy to see all the beautiful colors. Oh, I see summer. Summer seems to be winning. Okay, spring and summer, Alexia, I see you. Okay, do we have any other answers in the chat before we go ahead? Um, my favorite season is fall and then winter and then spring and then summer. There are a lot of fruit flies and it's so hot and everybody's outside and there's just so much sweat. I was in Niagara last weekend and my goodness. I've never been to Niagara in the summer before. It was something else. Thank you also again for joining us. Today, let me just quickly introduce FACE and what we do, and then I'll introduce our fantastic speakers and panelists for the day. So, FACE Coalition is a Federation of African Canadian Economics. We're non-for-profit funded by the government of Canada to provide funding, debt financing for Black entrepreneurs specifically. Over the past 4 years, we have funded over 500 businesses to the tune of $50 million. And we continue to empower the Black community with not just the loans, but also workshops like this one's, financial literacy. We serve as a connector, as a catalyst to generational wealth creation. So Danielle Changardner is a registered social worker and psychotherapist and the founder of Rite of Passage Mental Health Services, a Toronto-based wellness hub providing therapeutic support for individuals, couples, and families with a focus on the BIPOC and immigrant experience. With over 15 years of clinical and community mental health experience, Danielle takes a strengths-based, anti-oppressive, and trauma-informed approach to psychotherapy. Danielle is deeply committed to creating safe spaces for healing, especially for those managing intergenerational trauma, cultural identity challenges, and systemic stressors through her private practice and public speaking engagements. She continues to advocate for culturally attuned mental health care that affirms the lived experiences of racialized communities. Let's drop some flowers in the chat for Danielle. Let's give honor when it is due. Yes, let's drop some virtual flowers. Clap for her in the chat. All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, Fumi, Fumi Ayowale is the founder and executive wellness coach at the Soul Clinic, a virtual wellness practice focused on emotional restoration, inner healing, and intentional living. Drawing from her background in clinical counseling, Christian spiritual formation, and executive coaching, Fumi supports high-achieving women and professionals in navigating burnout, transitions, and deep inner healing. Her work uniquely blends faith, psychology, and leadership principles, positioning her as a sought-after voice on mental health, identity, and personal growth within the Black and immigrant communities. Through one-on-one coaching, retreats, and group programs, Fumi guides clients to live with greater alignment, emotional resilience, and soul wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give some virtual flowers, round of applause to Fumi Fatono Ayowole and Danielle Chang Gardner. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Yes, so I will, call on Danielle first, and then we'll go to Fumi. And afterwards, remember, take note of your questions. You can put them in the chat. You can send them to me privately, and then we'll take it from there. Over to you.
My name is Danielle Chang Gardner, but everyone calls me Danny, so feel free to call me Danny as well. And I am a psychotherapist. I have my own practice, ROP Mental Health Services. We provide psychotherapy to individuals, couples, children, and youth. We also do interactive workshops and speaking engagements as well, such as this one. So if any of those things interest you, please feel free to reach out to me. And on most platforms, I'm just at ROP Mental Health. So feel free to reach out. And the personal, where a lot of my events are posted, because I have yearly women's events and sometimes dating events for people 30 and up. You can check me out at Danny Chang, so DANI underscore CHANGG on pretty much all social media platforms and YouTube. All right, so with that being said, we're here to talk about, obviously, how to scale up and stress down. So, how to keep our business going and keep our mental health and our stress under control. So, in terms of wellness, right? I think wellness encompasses so many things. And as I said, fund me, feel free to jump in. But I feel like wellness encompasses so much, right? It is not just, having a bubble bath, although I love baths, right? It is your emotional, your physical, your mental, your spiritual, all of those things encompassed contribute to your wellness. So I kind of wanted to go through all of those pieces because at ROP, we always say better relationships with the people around you, most importantly yourself, is what creates, good mental health, wellness, right? Because that is what's most important, right? So anyway, we'll kind of go through a few things, but with the physical, I often even ask my clients, how are you doing from a physical health perspective? Because if you're not doing well from a physical health perspective, right? If you have an illness, if you have an injury, if you're anything physically wrong with you, that likely could transfer to the mental, could have an impact on your overall wellness and your, mental health. So these are even questions I ask in the during therapy, during our consultation, right? But fund me, feel free to, as I said, feel free to jump in any time. And then in terms of the spiritual, right? Not everyone necessarily, has a religion or goes to church, but how are you doing from, when I say spiritual, that can encompass so many different things. Some people are just, not religious, but spiritual. Some people just, believe in energy, positive affirmations. So whatever that is for you that fills you up in that way is also important to help you on your journey to wellness, right? And then the other piece I wanted to talk about is emotional, right? So when you're going through, everyone has periods of when their emotions are heavy. They're going through maybe a life-changing experience, a transitional period of their life, right? Where it's very emotional. And that's going to also impact you from a wellness standpoint. That's why you have to do things to keep all of those things in balance, right? But at any point in your life, usually there might be some areas that we're doing better than others, right? So, for instance, if people, no pressure, but for those people who are comfortable, maybe in the chat, you guys can tell me, what do you do to help yourself from a wellness standpoint? Like, what are some tangible things that you do? And don't feel afraid to put bubble baths because I still do like them. But what is one thing you do to help yourself stay in a good, space? I sleep. I love that one. Okay. Meditation. Go to the gym. Yes. Meditate, breath work, prayers, spa day by yourself. Oh, I have to try that one. I think I've only done spa days with other people, but that's very neat. Journaling. I think journaling is super helpful. Um, Gym, drinking water. Oh, a long rant with your besties or hanging out with friends. Yep. Community, super important. I think everyone should, oh wait, try Four Seasons, Danielle. Amazing. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I feel like my go-tos as of recent, I've done Korean body scrub. And then I live in Durham, so I've also tried, although they're kind of pricey, Thermia. I've gone to Go Place with my cousins a few times, but obviously all of these are things, little things that we can do to help ourselves from, a wellness perspective. But I think what it's important to realize is that, as I said, wellness is so many things. So we could be really physically fit, but maybe we're really struggling with, anxiety or depression, or we're, doing really well from a mental health standpoint, like we're feeling pretty good and whatnot. But maybe we, have some type of, other issue in other areas. So when I say balance, I realize life happens and everyone is going to have different things that happen at different points. And I think specifically as an entrepreneur, we often have to wear so many hats, right? We are trying to do it all, right? We're trying to be parents, we're trying to be partners, for those of you that are in a relationship, for those of you that are parents, we're trying to also keep our business going, especially as, if you're a small business owner too, you're doing just about everything, right? You're doing finance, you're doing the bookkeeping, and you're doing the actual work, right? So I think part of being an entrepreneur too is because no one can have everything, I think, perfectly balanced all the time. You do have to give yourself some grace and you do have to build in space for yourself. I think be organized with, like, as organized as you can with your business, but also at some time, if something falls off, give yourself that grace, recognize it, do what you need to do to, to get your, like, to help yourself in that area, right? I'm a big fan of delegating, right? I think if I don't particularly like something, oh, I'm definitely gonna reach out to someone else that I think is more of an expert in that area. Um, or even just, I have a team now, which is awesome. So even other team members, if I notice their strength is in another area, reaching out to them as well. So I think sometimes we also just assume that responsibility to do everything, or we can be really controlling because it's our baby, our small business, right? So remembering to also delegate tasks is so important. But I'm sure we'll get into all of these things as we go along. And guys, we can chat, so cut me off when you're ready, right? But and I think someone else mentioned it, but relationships are so important. And although we're busy with our small businesses, don't forget yourself and don't forget the relationships that are very important to you, right? And to also carve out time for those relationships, right? I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I can't tell you guys the amount of times where I'm like, geez, like, Mia did good, but I hope like she doesn't say, oh, all my mom did was work. And actually, I remember one day she brought home something and it said, what does your dad do? What does your mom do? Or whatever. And my daughter, one time she wrote work. My mom works. And I just thought, geez, like, although, hey, I want her to be like, I also want her to have like big aspirations and do well work wise and whatnot. But I also don't want her to think of work as one of the first things she says about me. So that happened a while back, maybe about a year and a half ago. And I really was intentional to say that some days I'm going to make sure I have time for her. Wednesdays and Thursdays now are the only days I see clients in the evening. The other days, it's like, yeah, me and you, we're going to do something. We're going to practice those ABCs or go to the park or whatever it is, because we still do have to remember, those important people to us. And then community, super important. The broader community too. And I think I'm in a good position to give back too. Sometimes I do free engagements, things like that within the community. And I think that's also very cathartic, and very powerful to be able to do that as well. So yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing that. I mean, it's so relaxed, it's so chill, but there's so many nuggets already, so many tips, so many tools you're already giving us. And I really, really appreciate that. I'm sure everybody does as well. So very quickly we will come to Um, for me, um, please share.
I'm
Yes.
excited. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Priscilla, for the invite. It's great to meet you, Danielle. Danny, you're a friend now, so I can call you Danny. Um, I feel like scale up and stress down is such an apt topic because that's what we want to do. As entrepreneurs, we want our businesses to grow, but we want to, as much as possible, avoid or reduce the stress, tone down the stress, because it's a major pain point. Like you said, Danielle, we're wearing so many hats as parents or spouses or partners. And then in our businesses, we're the ones running the social media, we're the ones writing the copy, we're the ones we're the ones thinking of the strategy, we're the ones looking at the books. Um, it's a big deal, especially for entrepreneurs. And for me, from my perspective, I would say that wellness is like a luxurious gift.
Mm.
I think that it's a luxurious gift that helps you to be able to do the things that matter to you and love the people that are dear to you. Danielle, you spoke about relationships, and then still be your truest, most authentic self, regardless of what I think is like society's scarcity stereotype or other people's opinions of you. I think that wellness is the ability to be all of you without losing your mind to overwhelm or compromising your health to stress. As entrepreneurs, we have big dreams. And so in our lives, we wear all these multiple hats. As an example, yes, I'm a mental health coach. I'm a speaker, as we can see here, but I'm also an employee wellness professional. I run a nonprofit. I have a podcast, which I just launched the new season, and I'm really excited about it. I have commitments and partnerships that, based on my faith, and I'm also writing a book. I'm following your footsteps, Priscilla. I did a really tiny book earlier on, but I'm doing a book that is literally 16 chapters, Priscilla, and I'm like,
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
thank you. I sent my friends or like deep covenant sisters, I sent them chapter 1 and they were like, whoa. I said, wow, babes, I have actually done up to chapter 10 and there are 6 more chapters to go. So the point is, and then of course, you're doing all kinds of things with your life, right? So we're all wearing multiple hats. So you run a business, you're someone's friend, you're someone's child, you're someone's sibling, you're someone's family member. You may be taking care of older people or cousins. You may even like have family back home wherever you came from, whether it's Jamaica or Nigeria or, wherever you're from. You may be doing some other or have some other faith commitments. Maybe for some people that go to church, you may be doubling as the head usher or what you have all kinds of things you're doing. But for me, I think that in my own years of coaching and going really deep into why I do the things I do, I find it interesting that wellness or true wellness only happens when you're able to do those things, wear the hats that you wear, but still stay connected to your true self, to the truest core of who you are. So, as an example, if you are being a mom or a dad and you're being an entrepreneur and you are being maybe you have another part-time hustle or you are writing a book, but at the end of every day you are so worn out and you feel like you're putting on a face to all of those hats every time. That is not authentic. And I think that that's where we cut off that wellness part of it. I feel like wellness is when there is a running thread of the word would be authenticity, a running thread of authenticity in every single thing that you're doing. And so it's the ability to do those things you're doing and still be connected to you. It's being stretched, not overly stressed. I mean, because stress will come, yeah? The traditional definition of stress as we know it, that pressure on you, but not to the point of where you are breaking and you are burning out. Wellness is giving yourself grace when you drop the ball, like Danny said, but it's also expanding capacity because you may need to delegate, like Danny said, or automate. Like I follow, I've forgotten his name right now. He is the author. I'm looking for the book in my brain. Anyway, he's told us that, there's some things that you can do yourself. There's some things that you will automate because they need to run, There's some things that you will delegate because you need to give it to somebody else. There's some things that you need to teach other people how to do it for you in some cases, right? And there are some other things that they may not be as important or they may not be as burning for right now. You prioritize, you put some things on hold. We are in like various seasons of our lives. At the beginning of this conversation, we talked about favorite seasons, but even in our personal lives, we have seasons. Some seasons with regards to family, seasons with regards to maybe if you are moving, if you're a newcomer, if you're settling in, seasons if you are starting a new, maybe pivoting to a new line of business or starting a new job and combining it with entrepreneurship. We are all in these different seasons, and being able to give yourself grace as you're wearing many hats and finding people along the way. That's the part about community and relationships that you can ask for help and, maybe even carpool or exchange things, do things that it's like mutually beneficial. Wellness to me is living your bedazzled life. I have a mentor that asks, what is your bedazzled life? That ability to dream your bedazzled life and live it, even if the road is not all the way straight or free of challenges, but you're doing it and doing it well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fumi, for that charged, I think, opening. Thank you, Danielle as well for that very spirited opening. So everyone, it's time for you to ask your questions. I know we already have some questions, but if you have other questions, please put them in the chat and we will ask our speakers because this is the time. And thankfully, like you can see, they embody everything they're speaking about. They are passionate about this mental health, mental wellness space. They have a lot of experience with it as well, especially within the Black community, within the BIPOC community. So you would today get culturally relevant information and recommendations and maybe solutions to whatever it is that you're going through and whatever it is that you're seeking answers to. So we have a few questions here. So I'll ask those questions while we wait for more questions to start. So I'll start with you, Danny. I know you run your own business and you just mentioned how, you have employees as well. I know by the time you are running your business and you then have employees, you're a senior entrepreneur at that stage. So, entrepreneurship is often described as a marathon, not a sprint. From your perspective, what are some biggest mental health challenges that Black entrepreneurs face today?
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. Number one, that it is a marathon and it's not a sprint, right? And I think Black entrepreneurs deal with so much. I think part of what we deal with for some of us is part of the reason we got into entrepreneurship to begin with, right? I've often felt in the past, right? I'll be honest, I've always been pretty lucky with job wise. I've always had pretty nice jobs. But when I would try to get into those senior level positions, right, I'm noticing a lot of barriers, right? A lot of blockages, feeling like I'm, just really just like I'm pushing so hard to try to get into these areas and feeling like I've shown myself, feeling like I've shown my skills and what I can do, but still hitting that ceiling, and then also dealing with things that can happen at work, such as microaggressions, and things like that, right? So I don't think that when you're a Black entrepreneur, all of those things just disappear, but they might show up in different ways, right? They could show up when you're trying to get a space for your business. They could show up when you have like potentially even have like a client or someone that you're working with that where those might where those microaggressions come up again, right? So I think we just have all of those additional issues that we also have to deal with, stereotypes. I've always been someone who perhaps, some may say too authentic, in the sense that obviously when I'm speaking in a professional sphere, I'm obviously going to still be a bit more professional, but I feel like a little bit, especially of my Jamaican background, always comes out. And I really like that in my current role as an entrepreneur, I'm able to showcase that, right? And do that and it be because I'm working a lot in spaces. And recently I did a talk for senior management Black women at TCHC. And I loved that so much because I felt like number one, this is where I was trying to get to, right? But then I realized even when you're there, you're still experiencing those things just like we do as entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
So it is we also have barriers in terms of information. So that's why organizations such as FACE are so important, right? So we have lack of information in our I think in our communities, right? A lot of the time. And that's why it's so important for us, not to gatekeep, to give that information, to make those connections, to introduce your entrepreneur friend to this other entrepreneur friend, or your friend that's struggling with their finances to another accountant, right? Just because I believe that things like that, those some of those things that we, thought we may have been leaving in the corporate that come with us, um, barriers to information, and sometimes access to resources, things like that can also very much impact and also the Black entrepreneur. And also sometimes I think because of all the past trauma, sometimes we have self-doubt. Sometimes we're not believing, you know, in ourselves. Can I still do this? I remember early on in my practice, I remember there was one month where I didn't make as much, and I was just thinking, oh, did I make a mistake leaving my, city job, and all of these things go through your head, right? So I do think entrepreneurship and mental health go hand in hand, and overall wellness, right? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, it can potentially take a toll. Um, yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle, for that response. So I think one takeaway from that is it's if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling a type of way, it's not just you. It's a common feeling among other entrepreneurs as well. I like to take a time to always whenever I'm in sessions or workshops, to say, each one teach one. So we need to intentionally, as individuals in this community, say that I will break the generational curse of gatekeeping. So I have another question here, and it is directed to Fumi. So why is it so critical to view well-being holistically and not just as one thing? Because a lot of times before recently when I started to think about wellness and mental health more holistically, I used to think it was just about your brain, right? So why is it critical to view it more holistically in terms of career, financial, social, community, or physical, rather than just an isolated thing? Over to you for me.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to piggyback on some of the stuff Danny actually also said when she spoke about wellness as a all-round thing. She spoke about your spirituality, your emotional life, your mental life, your physical wellness. If you're sick, if you're in top health, if you're fit, your relationships with people. Think about it like a well or a river, and then that's you being the river, and then all these other parts of your life, for example, your career that you mentioned, Priscilla, now flows from that river. If you are not doing well, it's like the well or the river being clogged. If there is muddiness in that river, then all other parts will be affected. If something is going on and you're really not well as a result of, or as a result of a relationship drama, any form of betrayal or something going on, even with the friendship, even if it's not a romantic relationship, it can affect how you show up at work. It can affect how you show up with your team members, your employees. It can affect the way you even speak to them or how you speak to yourself. Sometimes, or let me give a personal example. I was having some form of friendship drama in June and July. It was the kind that I needed to get someone else to mediate. It was weird. It was really weird. And I found myself becoming very, maybe not bitter is the word. I found myself being sarcastic, being jaded.
Cynical.
Cynical. Thank you. Thank you so much. I found myself being so cynical about things, about people. Someone would slide into my DM and I'd be like, what do you want? The only reason why you're saying hello to me in the first place is because you want something. Like, I just became so guarded. And I had to intentionally wash my mind. I started by journaling to really write out and express what happened. How did this thing make me feel? What do I think now about myself, about God, about other people, about life? Like I had to do like a real detox on my own mind and basically coach myself back into saying, yeah, people will be people, life will life, but it doesn't mean I have to stop being me. It doesn't mean that I will stop being generous or open or giving back, right? So my point is that something was clogging the pipe of my own wellness, and it was affecting how I was showing up in the world, at work, with team members. Even in I looked back and looked at some of the ways I was speaking in engagements like this, and I was looking really at my facial expressions. You could almost tell in the eyes, maybe because obviously it was me. I knew the backstory, and but the point was, these things are all interconnected. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating right, if you're not working out properly, if you're really not taking care of yourself, other parts of your life will suffer. And as entrepreneurs, it may be that you're a solopreneur. And so if you don't work, you don't eat. It's not like it's not like and no shade to if you are a 9 to 5 person, but in a 9 to 5, maybe you're able to just rough it and just do the bare minimum, and you still get paid at the end of the month. But as entrepreneurs, you have to bring your fullest self every single day. So that's why it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I agree. I agree with everything you have said. We have a question here in the chat from Candice. And, I have two questions actually that are similar. So I will read the two questions and either of you can take it. So Candice says, how do you tell the difference between being stressed as opposed to being stretched in our entrepreneurial pursuits? The other question I had was, how can entrepreneurs distinguish between productive hustle and harmful overwork? So you just mentioned now for me that as entrepreneurs, like you eat what you earn, right? So you have to put in the work. 30 days don't necessarily make a pay. You have to put in the work, and then from the output, you can then have something to pay your bills and live. How then can we distinguish between being stressed in terms of, you know, life stress, as opposed to this just being a season in your entrepreneurial journey where you have to stretch yourself a bit more? How do we distinguish between productive hustle and harmful work? So either of you can go ahead.
Danny, you want to go first?
Sure. I feel like sometimes you're stressed when you feel like you're just like I talked about this. It's kind of like burnout, right? When you are just empty, you just don't have any more to give, right? I think it is a very thin line though. I will say it is because when you're stretched, sometimes you think, oh, I need to take a break. I need to relax. I need to retreat away from this, right? But perhaps this is like right before something big is going to happen, right? And you really do need to like stretch yourself a little bit more. I think some questions you can ask yourself, you know, how am I feeling in my body, right? Is this fear? Is this fear because I'm scared to step into this new season, this new level of my business, right? Ask myself, am I tired? Like, is it tiredness, right? Because I think, yeah, as I said, it's such a fine line, the being stretched versus being stressed, and sometimes it is blurry. I'm not going to say that I'm even always perfect with it, but I do notice that when I am stressed and I do need to take a break, I give myself maybe like literally maybe like a day. I will say, okay, today I'm just gonna take the break. But then guess what? Tomorrow I'm gonna get up, right? And obviously I know if it's something severe like you're severely depressed, that's a totally different thing. But in the case that we're just talking about, the day-to-day stressors, right? It's important that we just don't let ourselves get so stressed, get ourselves to that point where then it's going to take us longer to recover, right? So it's kind of about knowing yourself and knowing the signs of when you're becoming stretched, stressed, so that you can put in those maybe people, the delegating, maybe it's putting in a little girls' night, doing whatever it is that's going to kind of bring you back.
I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add for me?
Yeah, I wanted to add that I think sometimes it's also the perspective from which we see it. So for example, let me try and express what Danny was trying to say where she spoke about you feel like you're stressed, but you're really just stretched and you're afraid to get into the next level. For example, maybe you are trying to do something, you're trying to create a new course or a new program, or you are maybe taking on a new certification, right? And you know that this thing is going to take you to the next level. It is in line with maybe your purpose, right? That is a key indicator to check that you're being stretched, not stressed. And you may feel like this thing is stressful, but you're only being stretched, and it is your responsibility to resist the urge to be lazy. So let me just say it out loud. What Danny was trying to say in succinct terms is resist the urge to be lazy when you are being stretched. When you are being stretched, you may feel tired, but it's a good kind of tired. It's like a workout where, all the endorphins and everything is flowing. When you're being stretched, you would still have clarity. You still know where you're going and the end results that you're aiming for. When you're being stretched, there is a mental strain. It's almost like, I need to untangle this thing, but you can focus on the solutions and creative ideas are flowing. Like I said, you know the why. And so it's growth oriented. That's being stretched. When you are being stressed, you almost feel like you are cornered.
Mm.
You almost feel like, all these obligations, I can't breathe, it's too much. Where am I? I can't find myself. Your mind is cloggy. You feel scattered. You're unable to focus. You start procrastinating or you start reacting impulsively. You start, snapping at people that are supposed to be your people, right? Or you feel like you're chronically depleted. Those are indicators of being stressed. And so when you talked about productive hustle, Priscilla, productive hustle is, yes, you're being stretched. You know you're going somewhere. You can map out and say, this is my destination. This is the reason, my why for this destination. And this is how I'm going to get there. In that stretch zone, you may need some firelighters, people who will be encouraging you. You might need some people who will be reminding you that, hey, you said you were going to do this and the other. You may need accountability, right? Because in your stretch zone, because it's such a big dream or a big vision, you might be tempted to just drop it and say it's too big for me. But please, I encourage Candice and anyone else that's listening, take advantage of your support system while you're being stretched.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that I think what I'm getting from this is when you're being stretched, you need to, in yourself, have a goal in mind as to what this is going to achieve. And like Danny was saying, put some parameters in place such that you don't get to the point where you are then completely stressed and burnt out and then everything falls apart. So before you get to that point where everything starts to become too overwhelming and you can't breathe and you are just, being crushed under the weight of everything, put some things in place for like distressors that you can as an outlet. And my mother says something. She says we prepare for the day of battle in the day of peace. I think it is today when you feel energized and happy and upbeat that you should start to think about what would you do when you start to feel stressed? What are your outlets? For me, I know exactly what my outlets are. I know it's human beings, and then I really don't enjoy like big gatherings and all those people, but I have my small circle of rock solid support system, and I like to watch movies. So I know, and it's Hallmark movies. Once I start to feel like things are happening for too much, Hallmark, I don't care what anybody says about Hallmark movies, they are the holy grail for me. So you need to start to think about those things from now, is what I'm getting from what the ladies have spoken about. So thank you so much, Candice, for that question. I think we'll take maybe two more questions. Please, if you have other questions, please put them in the chat. Um, okay, Candice says thank you. All right, so I have a question for Danny. Um, Okay, for entrepreneurs working mostly alone, what strategies can they use to avoid isolation and create meaningful connections? I know you mentioned something about this earlier, but do you have maybe practical tools for entrepreneurs who are solopreneurs for them to avoid isolation? Because sometimes isolation can lead to depression in some cases. So are there tools or strategies that they can use to avoid isolation and then create meaningful connections?
Yeah. I was actually part of your question is actually part of my answer. I think when you are feeling, just by yourself alone, and honestly, I started just by myself, just me, right? So I can definitely identify with that. I think part of it is having that community, right? What I did is I reached out to my friend who got me into psychotherapy. I got into a group where psychotherapists talk to each other about the issues they're experiencing with clients, about, if they're getting into private practice. I went to events, right? I went to an event by another psychotherapist that was just about how to, kind of what we're talking about today, scale up your business if you want to turn it into a practice, right? So just getting around other people, right? Sometimes I would do that by just going to one of those working spaces where you can kind of just go in and work, just to like not just be at home, because I started during COVID, so most of my clients initially were virtual, and still the majority of my client base is virtual, but there is now like a percentage of my clients that are also in person. But yeah, so yeah, definitely that could be very isolating if you're not doing those things to get yourself out. Just go to a Starbucks, right? And then, as we talked about before, just maintaining those relationships, outside of work that you already have. Because I think also people who really struggled, even if you're not an entrepreneur, but just people who struggled when we were all working from home for a little bit, right? Were those people who didn't have strong social connections outside of work. If your only place where you were socializing with people was at work and then COVID comes, you're going to be not in the best place. That's why I do tell people, even some of my clients who are like, I don't like people. I'm like, well, guess what? We're going to start getting you to like them, because it's so important to have community. For times, COVID was a perfect example for situations such as that. And I think it's just an important part of the human experience, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert.
All right, we have a question here in the chat for you, Candice. For me, it's from Candice. She says, based on your experience, what sort of grounding techniques can you suggest to employ in a moment where you as an entrepreneur encounter being rejected by a customer, a fellow entrepreneur, friend, or even a funder? So the question summarily is asking how to deal with rejection.
Yeah, I can relate, Candice. Thank you very much for that question. I have been rejected by a funder. I have been rejected when, say, I make a pitch with regards to a customer or a client. Maybe I get to a really advanced stage in having discovery calls with a client or a potential client, and it looks like though they would sign up for my customized coaching program, but no, for whatever reason, they don't. Or if I do a pitch and I'm not one of the ones that get picked, or if I apply for a grant and I don't get picked and I get that email, there's one particular email template they send that I hate so much. But the point is, these things happen. Maybe I get some wins. I have won a few pitches before, or I make a pitch to a client and the client is like, yeah, let's go. But the point is, rejection comes to all of us. We have experienced it in various ways, shape, or form. And even as just human beings, you may be rejected by a friend, rejected, whatever, it happens. But the thing about rejection is that it can trigger your nervous system into like this fight or flight or freeze mode, because it feels like a threat to your belonging and your safety, especially if, quote unquote, you're a very sensitive person. And so you asked a question about grounding techniques, Candice, and it makes so much sense. The goal of grounding is to bring yourself back to the center so that you can respond rather than just react, and just, rather than flying off the seat of your, off the seat of your pants. I think I would recommend, first of all, pausing. I think that's the very, very first step that you should take. When you're encountering rejection, pause to ask yourself, what am I feeling at the moment? You may be able to silently say to yourself, this is disappointing. It is valid, but it will pass. Acknowledging your emotion helps you to see it for what it is, like almost like you're detaching yourself, like see it as an object rather than something that is controlling you. That's the very, very first thing, to pause and and dissect what you are feeling, almost like you want to name it and normalize it so that it doesn't seem so scary, it doesn't seem so overwhelming to you. The second grounding technique, as it were, would be breathing. You know, there's so much research out there now that tells us about the power of your breath. Just breathing fast. If I start breathing fast right now, just nothing has happened. We're all in the same meeting together. But if I start to hyperventilate, I can work myself up into a panic attack. And you guys that are watching me on the Zoom, you can also be infected by it. It's that powerful. So breathing, you can use breathing to reset your nervous system. You can try box breathing. I'm sure you guys have, you may, if you can research it and Google it. Box breathing is so powerful. Being able to inhale for 4, exhale for 4. You can hold your breath and you repeat it because it sends signals to your brain that you are safe and it will reduce the intensity of the emotion. So breathing, I tried it this morning. Let me confess to you guys. Early this morning, I went to my son's room. His room was so scattered. Early in the morning, I was like, what's going on? He's 9. But I was like, what's going on? I started shouting. I can't remember what he said. It made me say something even louder. And then I was like, it's too early for this. And I just sat down on his bed and I started to breathe. And I really had to calm myself down. And then I apologized to him because I really wanted to model, because I could have gone to the bathroom and done the breathing and come back. But I sat with him, I breathed, I did the box breathing, I chilled, and then I apologized to him. He didn't reject me. It wasn't like a case, but I wanted to just share with you guys how breathing can help to, calm you down and pull all the parts of yourself. Someone I know would say it's almost like calling a meeting with your lungs, your esophagus, your pull it all together back. Another I would say grounding technique is just being able to stand up and do something quickly, like micro movement. So sometimes I just stand up and do squats, or I stand up and I stretch, or I like move on the spot, right? If you're alone, you wouldn't look like you're going crazy, right? Doing that. So do that. It's called micro movement. So you can roll your shoulders, you can twist your neck, you can do something that just helps to release tension that rejection can create in your body. And then finally, reframe. Finally, reframe it. So what is the lesson or the redirection in what you're experiencing? You can replace that thinking of maybe I'm not good enough with this is just data. This is just information. This is just a way I can improve, whether in my relationships or in my pitching technique or in my grant writing or in my whatever. Frame it from I'm not good enough to this is data, and it's not a definition of your worth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for those tips for me.
Candice is amazing. She crunched it down. Feel it, face it, reframe it.
That's it.
We need
I
to
love
put
it.
T-shirts. I love it.
I love that. Feel it, face it, reframe it. Yes, yes, yes. And in just sharing, in responding to Candace's question, you answered another question that I had, which was, what techniques can entrepreneurs adopt each day? And I think with box breathing, with feeling it, facing it, reframing it, we can all this micro movement. And I'm learning all this myself. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I'm also learning today with how to what stress management techniques I can adopt. So thank you so much for sharing that for me. Final question for you, Danny, it would be, as a community, how can we create a safe and supportive space for Black entrepreneurs to survive, to not just survive, but also thrive in terms of how we support one another, in terms of the perception for mental health and mental wellness. I know there's still a bit of hesitancy in some quarters where people feel like, should I be talking about this openly and things like that? So how can we as a community build a supportive environment?
I said, so for other entrepreneurs you're talking about, right? Like how to
Yes.
build that safe space. Yeah, just yeah. Sorry. Okay. Because the question was so long. Could you just repeat the beginning of the question? Sorry,
Well, the
Maggie.
question is, as entrepreneur, as a community, how can we create safe spaces for one another? That's the summary question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. So, as a community, right? I think we've already touched on how, in the Black community, sometimes we do have experienced that gatekeeping and whatnot. But what you can do is be an example, right? Be a mentor to someone else, right? Someone else getting into the field. Like, I know that even one of my previous staff that wanted to end up doing what I'm doing, I'm like, yeah, if you have any questions, like, you could come and ask me because I understand that. Because at one point, I was in her shoes and I wanted to do my own thing. So instead of being kind of like threatened by one another, we can collaborate, right?
Hmm.
My yearly women's event, I do it with a friend of mine who's a realtor in Durham, right? And it's called Redefining Her. But what I mean is that we can, like, it's so much more powerful if we're to come together and to collaborate rather than try to work in our own, as we talked about earlier, silos
Hmm.
by ourselves. Because then maybe you have this information here, right? And you have different information that could be useful here, but we're not sharing, we're not sharing those resources, right?
Hmm.
I think to build a supportive environment, you have to be that person yourself and exemplify that in the way that you interact with other entrepreneurs, specifically Black entrepreneurs, right? And then in terms of, mental health, I think, if I'm being really honest, because earlier in me, you called me out when I was saying it but not saying it. So if I'm being really honest, right? I think the women, the Black women, oh, they're coming to therapy. They are like a lot of my client base, right? So I think a part of it is getting this to the men, right? Having those male Black psychotherapists or having those males in the community, right? That are really exemplifying this, right? And
Hmm.
building that community for them as well, right? Because I do think that yes, overall there is still some stigma around that in the Black community for sure, right? Um, and as you guys said, whether you're, of Caribbean heritage, if you're from a continent within Africa, we're all Black people, and I do think that there is still that stigma. So
Hmm.
the more we talk about it, the more we talk about the struggles that we face, even as entrepreneurs with one another, we normalize it. We normalize going to therapy, right? That's going to be really healing for one another, and that's going to just help us to elevate.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danny, for that.
Unity.
And thank you so much, ladies, for those responses. Do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
I had one comment based on something Fumi said. She talked about purpose and the way that you know that you're, not stressed but stretched is when you know you are doing things that are in line with your purpose. And with all of my clients, a lot of the ones, especially if they're having, self-esteem, work-related issues, we go through a series of purpose questions, where we ask, like, what are you good at? What do you like? What can you be paid for? What does the world need, right? Because these are questions that get your mind going and help you to identify, am I currently, living in my purpose? And if I'm not, I understand we all have to keep the lights on, right? If you're not, how can you do something today to help you move in that direction? So just wanted to leave everyone with that and encourage them with that, and just to remind you to take care of yourself and in whatever way fills you up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danny. Just before you go, I was going to ask, where can people find you in case other people have like private questions they want to ask you about your practice or they want to sign up for therapy? Where can they find you?
Okay, beautiful. I'll also put it in the chat, but my website is just www.ropmentalhealth.com. As I spoke about earlier, I also do have, I used to be, a YouTube personality for a short period of time, where I also have relationship videos just to talk about different issues that can arise within relationships. And that can be found at, on YouTube, Danny Chang, DANI underscore CHANGG. That is also my IG profile, Danielle Chang Gardner on LinkedIn, and just at ROP Mental Health. So I'll put it in the chat, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. For me, do you have any final comments? And then where can people find you?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. It's really been great hanging out with Danny and Priscilla today. I wanted to emphasize really taking care of yourself as an entrepreneur because you're the one that sets your own hours. You can work and work all night, or you can work till the early hours of the morning, or you can work and forget um, other people that are important to you or to take care of yourself. Danny spoke about how now she has ensured that it's only Wednesdays and Thursdays that she attends to clients in the evenings. Other days, she has set them aside for family. So the very first thing I want to encourage every entrepreneur, because, you know, it's so demanding and you're constantly, it's almost like you are the one, your brain is constantly working and managing this stress. The first thing I want to suggest before we go is take micro breaks, even in your day. Just 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I wonder if anyone has explored the power of a 20-minute nap. Ah, oh my gosh. That power is like, it's like a refresh button. And if you can't take a nap, you can take a quick walk. Just a, the point is, it's a micro break, not a break that will now stretch. Oh, I want to take a break. Then I watch one episode of one season and I'm there and I'm watching 3 episodes. No, not that kind of break, please. A micro break for your regulation. It just helps to hit refresh on your brain. The second thing is make sure you bookend your day, meaning let it have a stop. Okay, maybe I work from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Those are my hours. Bookend your day. And even as you set those hours, let it sort of have like a starting ritual and an ending ritual. It helps. If you were a 9 to 5 person, you would get to your day, your office, you'd probably have your coffee, right? And you sit down, you start the laptop, blah, 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 or you have a meeting to start the day. There's a ritual that begins your work day, even as a 9 to 5 person.
Mhm.
The other side, when you're ending as an entrepreneur, you can decide, I'm going to journal as a bookend to my day. Or if you are religious or spiritual, you can say a prayer. Or you can decide, I'm going to go on a short walk. Or, I'm going to have a glass of wine at 6 p.m. every day. Whatever you do, have a ritual for starting up and winding down. It really helps. It sort of like tricks your brain into focus mode when you are focusing, but it also gives you that reassurance that it 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 it, it will stop or it will pause and you start another cycle the next day. In my culture or parlance, they say in pidgin language, it says work no dey finish. I wonder if you guys understand what that means. Meaning it will still be there when you come back tomorrow, right? So please always bookend your day starts and end. And it really will, I think, make a difference on your mental health as an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Oh, yes. Where can people find me? I want to emphasize currently the nonprofits that I run that provides free 20-minute mental health support coaching for free, where you can book, and it's called the Virtual Soul Clinic. The website is www.thevirtualsoulclinic.com. I will put it in the chat. Personally, I am at Fumi Ayowole on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I am Fumi Fatono Ayowole. And my personal website is also the Fumi Ayowole personal website.com. So I'll put it all in the chat, but this has really been a pleasure and honor. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, let's drop virtual flowers. Round of applause in the chat for these amazing ladies. I can see somebody in the chat saying, I can't take a nap. That is true. That is me. I can't take a 20-minute nap. The rest of the day will be off. Okay, so thank you so much, ladies, for these actionable tips that we can start to use from this moment. You know, the box breathing, for example, those micro movements, having a start to your day, to your stop to your day, um, building a community like, Danny was saying earlier, finding maybe a co-shared working space around you to go to work on Monday if you have to work, things like that, things that we can start to use from today. Thank you, ladies, so much for your time today. And thank your daughter for us, Danny, for, yielding her mom today on her, I know you're supposed to be with her right now, but thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, Fumi, as well. Thank you, ladies. This has been really, really amazing. Thank you. Everybody, if you need to find the ladies, Fumi, Danny, they are both on LinkedIn, on Instagram, everywhere, on website. You can see their details on the chat. And then, like I said earlier, each one teach one. Now you have gotten all these amazing tips, teach other people, share their information with other people so that more people can also benefit from, all the solutions that they have. For them, for the community. So thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for your time. I will give you 5 minutes back of your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for joining on time. All right, everyone. Thank you, thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will talk to you very soon. Bye.